Greetings to the viewers of Channel 24. My name is Vladislav Novikov, and Sergey Aslanyan is with me. Sergey, hello. Hello. Before our conversation, such very unpleasant news came out, but I think it is still worth paying attention to it, because someone may be skeptical, and someone may really see something in it. An elixir of eternal life is being developed for Putin, says the Times. Officials close to Putin are developing anti-aging products. The Ministry of Health and the Russian Federation is studying 3D bioprinting to create tissues and organs, as well as methods to combat cellular aging. They also say that he bathes in the blood of a deer there in order to somehow, in general, prevent this very aging. And I would be interested to hear your opinion on how you look at this news, because after all, technological progress is present. And if 50 years ago we could not talk about it, could not even think about it, now it is becoming a reality. I would like Putin not to live to see this reality. I also want to remember George Friedman's book, which is called The Next 100 Years, Forecasting the Events of the 21st Century. Of course, he delved into geopolitical processes, but he also mentioned that human life expectancy would increase significantly. Still, I would like to hear your opinion. How do you view this kind of news? This information adds up to a general series of news that we also discussed some time ago. Although they then seemed even more caricature. For example, 6 months ago the exploration of 4 moons of Jupiter began, Ganymede, Europa and 2 more, which I do not remember. It was also mentioned that the Yelabushka economic free zone has spread into space, and the owner of Tatarstan Minahan, who is known in Russia as Ray, has requested 491 trillion rubles for space exploration. This is slightly more than the budget of Russia for the next 50 years. And he has already received 53 billion from the almost bankrupt VTB Bank, which belongs to Kostin. And that's exactly the idea that the cluster of the free economic zone has finally spread into space. One of the concepts provided for the creation of a biofactory on one of the satellites to work on the human genome in order to increase life expectancy to 700 years. The first person who will live 700 years is Ray of Tatarstan Rustam Minakhanov. The second is one of the highest-ranking television lovers of women. Previously, he had a mistress who was a presenter on one of the central channels. And there was a great story, such a very good soap opera. His appearance allows him to count on the fact that it will be in demand for 700 years, that is, the second will be Kostin. The third, apparently, will take Putin, because Kostin, despite Putin's money, also has funds. 491 trillion rubles is announced as the official budget for space exploration so that these 3 can live 700 years. Therefore, the current works, which, in principle, fit into a completely normal, if published, beautiful selection of publications and books, where the head of Professor Jewell stands next to it, Heart of a Dog, then, Heart of a Dog, was also devoted to rejuvenation or attempts to prolong human life. Professor Dovol's head, as a kind of intermediate possibility, also allows a person to live a little longer than his physical capabilities allow. And in general, it is very regal. And a huge number of those who exploded, who considered themselves the owners of the entire planet Earth, went down in history, including, according to the memoirs of contemporaries, as people concerned with their eternity and reflections on the topic. Since I am so great, it cannot be that I am generally considered a man in the eyes of God. Probably, I will definitely be granted eternal life, but not counting on this eternity, sometimes I had to make some efforts on earth. And when we analyze how possible, in principle, it is possible to increase the life expectancy of a person, we remember the old joke about Leonid Ilyich Brezhnev, who ruled the country in a state of decay for a whole decade. And on this occasion, on the sidelines, they told with the intonations of the first television channel that yesterday, after a serious and long illness, without regaining consciousness, at the age of 98, Leonid Ilyich Brezhnev began to work. Therefore, it is possible to keep you in such a biological state of existence, when they will sign for you, if necessary, take a selfie against your background or put you out as a scarecrow on the mausoleum, much longer than a meaningful period of existence. Although we see that if Ray got worried and asked for the country's budget for 100 years in advance in order to live 700 years, it is not surprising that there is also a movement around Putin on this topic. Moreover, how is a normal oligarchic structure built in Russia? Here is in the place of the Lord God on earth. Well, in Russia it has long been known that all power comes from God. That is, Putin received power not from voters, not from the FSB, not from the manipulation of teachers in schools with ballots, not from stuffing, but from the Lord God. On an equal footing, we have someone to talk about. There is a retinue around him who knows for sure that this one, anointed by him, of course, well, look at him. But Apollo rides bears, and scares Siberian cranes, and, if necessary, who needs an amphora there, he will dive in and get a whole ship. And this whole crowd of people around him, she lives at his expense, she has a career at his expense, she, in principle, feels great at his expense. And that's how the deputies, who, in principle, are not all for the war in the State Duma, are obliged to prove their loyalty and regularly shout some nonsense to the top. And the more absurd your stupidity, the sooner you will be patted on the head and told, or maybe, for the next term, comrade, you have spun something stupid here. And here is the entourage around, she is running around, someone is shining shoes, someone is washing Putin's socks, someone is carrying a suitcase behind him, and someone is telling him, Vladimir Vladimirovich, let's live forever. You know, there is one such old shamanic way, to drink blood from the people, if anything, add deer, bathe in champagne, smear yourself with caviar, heal clay again, fly with Siberian cranes, ventilate and so on. And since a person lives in a situation of absurdity, well, I want, for example, a war with Ukraine. Come on, give me war. And here is the war for you. Give me a project for a 700-year lifespan, a period when maybe even 2 more times, that is, 1,400 years, and here you are, 1,491 trillion. And when you already begin to confuse reality with fantasy, then, in principle, it becomes a normal topic for discussion in your circle. And now there are people walking around who are concerned about the life expectancy of Putin. Well, it's profitable, it's great, and it draws attention, because this retinue, it's quite faceless. If you look at the Russian governors, they are all cast face to face according to the same pattern. They are all taken from one special production of governors, especially those who come from the guards. It is impossible to distinguish them. They are all the same. And here are the same number of identical people who somehow try to hang orders on their chests and say, Vladimir Vladimirovich, live forever. I have one sure way of grandma. Someone pushes you away, says, come on, I have a whole research institute here, if anything, Vladimir Vladimirovich. 100 years. There is even a book. Well, then Minakhanov appears, who says 700. And for Putin, whose life is so different from the life of a normal person, this is taken seriously, financed. And foreign intelligence services, when they look at what is happening in this bunker, they are very well informed. They, among other things, receive this amazing information. As you know, Putin held a meeting today on how to extend your personal life expectancy to 200 years. There were well-deserved reports, certain steps were taken, a roadmap was drawn, and everyone rushed to implement it. In some time, there will be the next report, and we will again discuss that now the plan has been raised for 250 years for Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Here, please, provide research institutes, well, quickly get down to the topic, well, quickly figure out what Minakhanov has, if anything, in space. This is how Russia lives. In Russia, the power is so far away in space, so far away. It's like in the film, KIN-DZA by Donald. The government of another planet is home. It's an interesting topic, but I still have to move on to more serious topics, so to speak, and perhaps even unpleasant ones. It is clear that this topic is unpleasant, and today all colleagues, including me, including my relatives, met this news. Recently, there have been a lot of them, which indicate that our peaceful people are suffering. Tragic situations are repeated in the world geopolitical arena. They are not going to do anything about it at all. Today, Ukraine was shelled, people died in Lviv. My hometown of Kryvyi Rih also suffered. Unfortunately, people also woke up from the explosion, windows were blown out and many were also blown out, so I suspect that they were shell-shocked. But today's story in Lviv is absolutely heartbreaking, tragic. This is a targeted murder. This story is that as a result of the strike, Yevgeny's wife, 3 daughters, Irina, Daria, Emilia were killed. And he watched as his relatives were carried out. He miraculously survived, because, as far as I understood, he decided to return for water and just at that moment there was a blow. Against this background, I also remember the story that happened in Odessa, where the family died, only the husband remained. He went to the 3rd Assault Brigade and, unfortunately, also died during the fighting, trying to eradicate the entire Putin pack. We see that such stories are repeated. When I watched and read these stories, I came up with a quote from General Lebed. I will read it. The most remarkable soldiers, it turns out, are people who, leaving home in the morning, did not even think about war, and in the evening, when they returned, they found a crater in the place of their own house, in which their wife, children and parents evaporated. And now he is no longer a man, but a wolf who will tear as long as he lives, and he will live a long time. He does not value his life, he does not need it, he does not need money, he does not need orders, he does not need anything at all. He has only one thing, revenge. That is why he will live a long time, and death will bypass him. All of this is catastrophically terrible, but I would also like to consider it in relation to what is happening in the world. We see that all this is happening on the eve of the meeting between Vladimir Zelenskyy and Biden. And now there are more reformatting in our country. There are certain replacements that have not happened before. All this, you know, is somehow brewing. This is also brewing around allowing us to hit Russian territory or at least shoot down missiles with the resources of our allies, which fly at ordinary people and create those warriors who will go and take revenge. So, my question is probably about the same thing, which we talk about time after time. How does this democracy sympathize with itself against the backdrop of what is happening? Firstly, in a war invented out of the blue by one person simply because he got bored, it is clear that the target for a missile strike is not intelligence data, when it is difficult to determine where the Ukrainians have tanks, a concentration of equipment and manpower. Therefore, they hit houses, peaceful cities, because they are in the palm of their hand. It's easier. Ukraine cannot be defeated, so you have to kill whoever you can't hit, because you no longer hit the army. You don't have the opportunity to be a competent commander who has some data and an understanding of what the causes and effects will be. You got under this bush, and there is a hidden factory, and finally you won, because you destroyed a very important object. This will not happen. Russia does not fight like that. Russia always fights with a shovel. Therefore, for Russia, the civilian population is a normal, legitimate goal. To hit the family, kill the wife, kill the daughters. This is normal. For the rest of the world has become, firstly, cynical. Even before the war, some with horror, and some with admiration, we watched such attributes of children's fashion as diapers with skulls and skeletons, the Disney cartoon, Bride from the Crypt. And in general, it's funny, it's great. Years like people who profess how bad it is to live now, and let's all die. And the norm of life, when life is a penny, and death is not scary, and even funny. Along with this, there are also religious fanatics, Islamists, who believe that it is desirable to get 72 virgins right now. To do this, you just need to press the red button. And if the morality of society has officially declared in different historical periods the attitude towards a person as an object of care, then there is no need to kill them just like that, because there is nothing to do, having fun, for example, hunting for live targets. There were attempts to formulate at least a non-blasphemous attitude. It was not sincere, but at the level of religions, sometimes they tried. Well, Christianity, for example, once tried, but it cannot be said that it succeeded. At the level of states, although we do not take into account the Middle Ages, there were periods when, for example, Elizabeth Petrovna in 1741, during the War for the Throne, being the daughter of Peter the Great, introduced a 20-year moratorium on executions. An absolutely amazing period in the history of the Russian Empire. But nevertheless it existed. For 20 years, people have even lost the habit of cynically killing people for pleasure, because before that tickets could be sold, they came with children. It was interesting. And now, in our 21st century, what chic children's paraphernalia, what wonderful children's attributes with skulls and crossbones. Well, it's funny, well, it's a collection. That is, we see that in fact, people, like a very unsuccessful experiment of nature, unworthy of inhabiting the planet Earth, well, it so happened that mammoths became extinct, but people remained. Although it should have been the other way around, that mammoths were certainly much better than humanity. And today, every time we witness another crime by Putin, another disaster, mass death of people or individual death of people, we look around and wait. It cannot be that this goes unnoticed. This is outrageous. Look, there must be some kind of reaction to this. And there should be, among other things, a reaction from politicians and the public. Because this is in front of not just one village, this is in front of the planet Earth. And planet Earth is watching it on TV. It is impossible not to know and not to see this. Even if you don't want to, even if you don't turn on the TV, you will still know that there is a war going on in Ukraine, that there is a war in the Gaza Strip, and what is happening in Myanmar. You will never find this Myanmar on the map. You don't even know what it used to be called, but you know that something is happening there too, not to mention Africa and its eternal hungry children. And since this is imposed by the terrible everyday life when they kill, it is superimposed on the general morality of society, where there is a children's changing ribbon with skulls. Well, that's great. And a young mother who is 19 to 20 years old buys it because it is a fashionable thing. And she will have, if anything, tights and a t-shirt on the child, and a hat with skulls. And after that, we want some adult uncles to grab their hearts and say, no, well, this is impossible, well, this is definitely unacceptable. Here again, just cynically at civilians, pressing a button, setting a target on my computer, that I would kill this family, Iskander missiles. It cannot be that this remains unanswered and unanswered. That's how I didn't give a damn, so I didn't give a damn. And someone else's war, and someone else's deaths. And at the same time, America is showing off, it does not give weapons. And you are fighting incorrectly. And you are behaving wrongly. And America in this regard, it behaves in a similar way, for example, in relation to Israel. It does not give Israel either. She said, Israel, somehow you are crushing this demonic in the Gaza Strip too decisively. You leave a little for seedlings there, because if you defeat the Gaza Strip now, then we will not know what to do with you. And we have the Gaza Strip as a hotbed of evil. We are occupying it, we are keeping it under control, and this is very important to us. Therefore, Israel, you will not get weapons, because otherwise you will win with them. Ukraine, what, are you hurting again? And what follows from this? That somewhere out there we have to react for you in a special way. The world is actually much worse and much more cynical than we think. We see some obvious manifestations of this cynicism, we see an obvious picture of duplicity. And we see, among other things, to what extent the great authorities to whom we turn for morality, ethics and concrete deeds are grey and worthless. Moreover, they are presidents, chancellors, and prime ministers. That is, these are the best representatives of countries nominated by different peoples. They are actually ordinary greyness, and absolutely immoral. And now we are again discussing a completely bloody situation that takes us all to the core. Because we throw up our hands in helplessness, we understand that the army is fighting, the army is trying. But there are still a huge number of shortcomings, including when America does not give weapons, when the West is against it. And now the situation will definitely be reversed, because it is impossible to continue otherwise. It's possible. And in general, why now? We had a coffee break after 1800, and now we are home, TV, spaghetti. Tomorrow morning, let's talk about what you have. Will 100 Ukrainians be killed tomorrow morning? Okay, we will correct the statistics, yes, there, plus 100. We will discuss this, yes, of course. By the way, if anything, we express deep concern. And this is a conversation about the disappointment when a huge number of countries rely on their neighbors, on the world community, and there is a feeling that someone will come to the rescue. How Armenia hoped that when Azerbaijan took away Karabakh, someone would also become an accomplice. The injustice is obvious, it is clear where the truth is. It cannot be that they do not come to the rescue. Perhaps they will also betray you. And Israel sees that they are betraying. And how? With scale, backhand. Israel, you are wrong, and therefore we will not help you. So how dare you not help? How dare you not understand the obvious? Yes, we understand everything, but we will not help. And Ukraine for what time? In the 638th, in 2959, in the 7633rd, disappointed, amazed. How so? Just like that. And this is not exactly an answer, but this is a situation when it is clear that you will have to win the war on your own. You will have to do it yourself. It will be one-on-one. And as Gorodnitsky wrote, and everyone around seems to be in favor of it, and looks kindly into your eyes, and loudly praises you. And you are a prey for crows, and your house is empty and ruined, and a hryvnia will be watered on the floor. And this song is called Betrayal. It is supposedly about something else. No, that's exactly what it's about. Therefore, it hurts us, and for the rest, statistics. Oh, I listen to you, and in principle it is impossible to disagree with this. Unfortunately, there is still hope that everything will move forward. It seems to shift. The only question is that these shifts are not just the fact that something has taken and changed. There is a price for this. Here is the worst thing. All the weapons that we were provided with, what we did not have before, there is a specific real price, and this is scary. I would still like to go a little deeper about the upcoming meeting with you, the meeting between Biden and Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy will come and say for sure, Mr. Biden, look, over the past week, we have had these events, and there are really many such events. It feels like Putin is trying to intimidate us. My personal feelings are that I see that he is doing this, and I see, unfortunately, that many of my fellow citizens with an open soul and an open heart are experiencing all the tragedy that is happening absolutely cleanly. But, unfortunately, due to this experience, Putin achieves his goal. Someone panics, someone catches demoralization, someone gets too upset and sad, goes into these states, and it's difficult. I will also kind of move away from my question a little, but I would like to urge our citizens to hold on, to understand what the enemy wants to do, and to hold on. Because at the front it is absolutely clear where they are shooting from, and when incomprehensible shots are fired in your soul, it is difficult. Putin wants it. He wants this suffering, confusion. You can't give it to him. So, probably, there are still two questions, Sergey. Does Putin succeed in intimidating Ukrainians? And what will we see at the end of this dialogue between Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Biden? Biden will not promise anything serious, he will nod his head, he will evade any acute issue, he will agree that yes, this is the trouble with Ukraine. And this visit, extremely important for Zelenskyy in Ukraine, is absolutely passable for Biden. On this occasion, he will shake his head. Next to him stands Kamala Harris, possibly the future president. And against the backdrop of what the configuration looks like now on the ruling Olympus of the United States of America, Zelenskyy comes once again to the same people for whom all this is not news. And for Zelenskyy, You need to come up with a key on how to open this door, because it does not open. Yes, they talk to you on the doorstep, look through the peephole. In fact, they even give you the illusion of this shake of hand, when they pat you on the shoulder, say, yes, yes, Vladimir, this is normal, of course, yes, of course. And what's next? Is this already a meeting? Moreover, Zelenskyy has answers, but he has no way to present it. Well, how to get through? How to pay attention? How to show you that a lot has changed during this time? Since the last time you read the summary on Ukraine, everything has changed a lot. And again the Ukrainians died, who could not have died, could have been saved and survived, only because there were no weapons, and you do not give them and do not finish many other things. This is on the one hand. This is a picture that will not change in any way. And the visit, of course, will take place. Yes, the visit will take place. In everyone's eyes, everyone will shake hands, and by and large, important for Ukraine, it has no meaning for America. None at all, no how. Well, you have to accept it, show it to the whole world. By the way, you know, Zelenskyy came here the other day. We talked with him. We had a good talk. We have reached the fullest points of mutual understanding. That is, in fact, every time we answer any such question, we come to the same thing. To the fact that the situation does not change. Ukraine cannot be defeated. But Ukraine cannot be allowed to win, which is what the West is doing. And Putin, of course, knows that a person dies being morally broken, and it is impossible to defeat Ukraine. It is impossible to defeat Ukraine, it will not work. It must be demoralized. And while Zelenskyy is trying to get through to Biden or Kamala Harris, he is nodding his head. And at this time, Putin is very calmly, for breakfast, lunch and dinner, trying to kill as many Ukrainians as possible, counting on the fact that without electricity, without heat, with the loss of wives and children, they will be broken. And fortitude, like General Glebich is absolutely right in this, is sometimes based on rage, revenge, moral superiority. It is she who wins on the battlefield. That is why Ukraine must be stripped of this serious moral superiority, although it is impossible to solve revenge and rage in the desire for revenge, because the number of people taking revenge on the battlefield is increasing every day, as many lose their loved ones and go to take revenge. Well, then Ukraine will need to be harassed by destroying infrastructure, bombing kindergartens, shooting at schools, markets and train stations in order to inflict maximum pain, because this affects civilians. Because these are the very losses when you throw up your hands out of despair and fall into despair. And then one of the two. Either you yourself die, being broken, which Putin wants to do to all of Ukraine, or you take up arms. And then nothing can oppose your revenge. And Ukraine, as we can see, is really progressing over these 2.5 years. But we see that Ukraine also has a huge number of internal problems. They were not solved before the war, they were not solved in the previous period of administration. In general, the democratic and envious way of changing power in Russia, when presidents come to power, including as a result of elections, is unacceptable in Russia. In Russia, power is considered a gift from God, and what God sent you has to deal with. Ukraine is different. Ukrainians are different. But how much more effort is spent to quarrel Ukrainians within the country? There are contradictions, Putin is aware of them, and on the one hand, he demoralizes by killing civilians, and on the other hand, propaganda works to ensure that Ukrainians are not united. It is clear that with such a geographical configuration, when a neighbor lives in the next room, nothing can be done. You are forced to live in this house. And then you are left with only the option of Israel, a country where military service is considered honorable, where the president's children not only fight, but also die, as was the case recently. And the leaders of the Knesset factions send their children to the front, because of their age, they themselves already out of reserve, and their children go to the front and also die. And all of Israel mourns over this, but inside it experiences an amazing uplift, when you understand that everyone is equal and we are all one. And it is impossible in Israeli society, which also has a lot of problems, to divide Israelis. And these famous shots, when, after October 7th, Israelis flew from all over the planet Earth to defend their country. They left a prosperous life, a safe life, businesses, money. These are the Jews who left money and everything else because their small, tiny Israel needed protection at this moment. It was necessary, and these people showed incredible dedication, not to mention that they showed fantastic training. Because whoever fights like an Israeli soldier, there is an opportunity to learn this. And it is not for nothing that new Israelis are regularly invited to consult various new democracies emerging in unexpected places on planet Earth in order to create something similar at home. Few people succeeded. There were attempts, and Ukraine did not have time. But it will have to turn into Israel with such a neighbor, when the position of defender of the fatherland will be extremely prestigious in society, when all people will prepare for this, when all people will have such an attitude towards the country, in response to the attitude of the country towards them, that they will drop everything and rush to defend Ukraine, not to save, but to fight back, so that it is not habitual. Listen, Russia will not calm down, and after a while there will be no Putin, there will be a different Russia, and then it will become the same, because Russia is incorrigible. Russia will always be at war with its neighbors and will definitely try to choose the weak as its victim. If Ukraine is weak, then it will be Ukraine. If Belarus is weak, then it will be Belarus. If it is a weak Uzbekistan, then it will go to Uzbekistan, to Tajikistan. It doesn't matter what. Russia will come up with what you are guilty of if I am hungry. And Putin knows all this. And Putin is working to break it, either with weapons or propaganda. Another thing is that we see Ukraine, it is too strong for him. Sergey, thank you for your participation in this difficult dialogue. Indeed, we raise difficult topics. I think our viewers are pleased to hear your analysis of what is happening today. Today is a really difficult day, as Ukraine experienced many days before. Thank you very much for your participation and forward to victory. Ukraine will win. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.